For the last thing today, we're going to talk about determining quadrants. Now, we've talked about this before already. We actually did this way back in pre-calc in, I think it was section 1-1, if I'm not mistaken. But you were told that if you, back in section 1-1, you were given something like this. If x is less than 0 and y is greater than 0, then what quadrant does x comma y lie in? That's what we did back in section 1-1. If x is less than 0 and y is greater than 0, then what quadrant does the point x comma y lie in? So back at then, when we did this, I would draw the little coordinate plane, and we talked about that this meant that the x value was less than 0, so my x value then was negative. So for a negative x value, that's going to eliminate these two quadrants because this is where x is negative. So we'd be traveling to the left. Y greater than 0 means we have a positive y value. So if we have a positive y value, that's going to eliminate these two quadrants, because positive y values would mean we would need to move up. So the only quadrant that's left is this quadrant right here, and our answer would be quadrant 2. Well, as we've already seen, it's very important to determine quadrants, to know about our x values if they're positive or negative. So you're going to be asked this same question. Determine the quadrant. But your given information is going to look a little bit different. So it's going to say something like the sine of theta is greater than 0 and the cosine of theta is less than 0. The sine of theta is greater than 0 and the cosine of theta is less than 0. Now what they're actually doing here, sorry about all the shaking, what they're actually doing here is they're giving you here the same information they gave you up here. It's just written in a different form. If they're telling you the sine of theta is greater than 0, and we know that sine is the y value, then they're telling you the y value is greater than 0. So what they're telling you is that you have a positive y value. And if they tell you that the cosine value is less than 0, the cosine is the x value. So they're telling you that the x value is less than 0, so your x value is negative. So then what we have is a negative x and a positive y, just like we did up there. I did that on purpose. So this is in quadrant 2. Now they can get fancier. So don't get confused when they do that. They may say something like, the secant of theta is greater than 0, and the tangent of theta is less than 0. And they want us to determine the quadrant. They'll always give you enough information to determine the quadrant. You just have to be able to decipher it. So if they're talking about secant, remember, secant has to do with the x value. So once again, this is telling you that x is greater than 0, so we have a positive x. If they're talking about tangent, they're talking about both values, because tangent is y over x. So they're telling you that y over x is less than 0. So they're telling you this fraction is negative. That's what they're saying. Well, remember, when we have a negative fraction, the negative fraction can be written like this, like I did it, but the negative could go in the top of the fraction, or the negative could go in the bottom of the fraction, or we could put the negative right out in front. Well, listen, we need to know some more information so we can determine what quadrant we're in. We already know, because my x value is positive, we already know we're not in quadrants 2 and 3, because this is where x is positive. So we know this. But now we need to know something about y. We need to know if y is positive or negative. This is giving us that information. We already know that x is positive, so our x value has to be positive, so this is possible. This one is not, because the x value is negative there. This one is possible, and it would make y negative. So what this is telling you when you decipher this and put all this information together is it's telling you that y is negative. So that's eliminating quadrant 1, moving us down here into quadrant 4, and so my answer there is quadrant 4. This is going to be important for tomorrow's notes, determining quadrants. This is the one thing you are going to mess up and forget to think about for the rest of the school year. We constantly forget to think about what quadrant we're in. You have to be careful with that.